opportunity for us to reconnect after a little while. It has been a little while. And for the sake of our listeners, it would be great to have a moment to introduce yourself, and share where you are, and possibly even to add into that space how we met and how the coaching, the relationship that we had came into your life.
Sure. Well, first, thank you very much for inviting me to speak to you again. It's great to reconnect. It's been too long. So Mark Barry is my name. I am currently the Managing Director and Vice President of Sales at HubSpot in EMEA. I'm based in Ireland, as I have been all of my life and career. I've been at HubSpot for just about 2 years. And before that, I was at Stripe. I was running startup and SMB at Stripe in EMEA. That was the last thing I did there, but was there for 7.5 years. So got to do lots of interesting building stuff while I was there. I was at Google before that for about 7 years, and various other kind of tech and media jobs before that. Or real world non-tech jobs before that, all the way back to the late 90s. You and I met when I was at Stripe, and I was probably midway through my time at Stripe, 4 or 5 years into it. And at the time, if I remember correctly, the kind of the chronology on all of that, I was leading some part of SMB in EMEA. I think I was probably double or triple jobbing it as well, professional services. I was doing some stuff on Benelux at the time as well. And it was a great opportunity for me at the time. Stripe had invested in leadership development and coaching, which I was super appreciative of. And you and I got to spend a lot of time together figuring out, how I figure out where I should go, what I should do, what my career should look like, and and the various I suppose lenses through which I should be looking at stuff, not just work, but how does work and life blend, and what does personal development mean in that whole self context. So that's how I remember it anyway, Maureen. I hope that chimes with how you remember it.
Wow, you remember it really well. That's exactly it. And I remember, and this isn't about reminiscing, but I remember key points of our relationship being around you being aware and building awareness of your brand. But I also remember, correct me if I'm wrong, this piece that you were really invested in, which is team and other people and the relationship piece.
Mm.
And I remember you working, and doing the work right on that self-reflection, and there was often a whiteboard in the room and there'd be scribbling going on. Do you remember that, on board, and models and all sorts of things to work with? If you think about the coaching relationship we had at that point and what stands out to you as key parts of coaching that helped you in your leadership, I either stop doing something or start doing something. Is there anything that comes to mind that goes, oh, that's the piece, or that's a piece in my brand or my working of me, or whatever it needs to be?
I think there are a couple of things. I think that the practice of coaching first, right, or the relationship, you talked about relationship there.
Mhm.
I learn and I get stuff done by spending time with people. It might sound like a very trite thing to say, right? But like, I think I learn visually. I like pictures, images, stories, things that I can use to kind of visualize situations in my head. And I like working things out in conversation. I've done that thing, especially as an earlier in my career as a manager, of kind of relying too much on myself to know the answer for something, and then quite often
Yeah.
getting it wrong because I've determined the answer is this. But over time, just learned that spending time with people and talking through a situation, a challenge, a problem, whatever it is a great way just to get perspective on it and make sure that if it is me that needs to make a decision, I'm fully informed on that. And I think just, that coaching relationship that you and I had was really about that. Here's the thing. Let's just talk about it for a bit and see where that leads us. And I think what it led me to, a couple of things that were really impactful for me about the coaching relationship that you and I had were a couple of things. One, on the kind of personal front, um, and I think my family would love to hear this, but I came away after a session with you once around being more agreeable. I sometimes needed to have the answer to stuff or have an opinion on things. If we were doing something, there had to be an opinion to us, or there had to be a contradiction to us or something like that. Sometimes it's just be agreeable. Like these are the people that you love. These are the people that you love spending time with. You don't have to manage the situation. Just, if it's within the range of agreeableness, if that is a word, then just, be agreeable. And I've done that since, and it has, turned out to be very helpful, and not, again, not one of those things that's extremely difficult to do. The other thing, more in a professional sense, was around the power of self-awareness. I would consider myself over time, again, given the kind of age I am, I suppose, and the degree of experience I have, or the opportunity to develop over time, I've learned that self-awareness is really important. Understanding, what you're good at, understanding where you get energy from, understanding what you don't like, and what you're not good at and what you should avoid. And that was something that you and I really worked on, especially as I was thinking about what should I do next, and that self-awareness was important. But it's also kind of like, I think it's a powerful tool, because I think we sometimes assume that we are very self-aware, and when we're talking to other people, we assume that they are also very self-aware, and sometimes that's just not true. Sometimes it's not the case. And so that, self-awareness of oneself, but also, having an appreciation of, just how self-aware somebody else is when you're working with them, or whether you're coaching them, or performance management, or whatever it might be. So that was one thing that came away. And then the other thing, we talked a bit about brand.
Yeah.
It's about telling your story better,
Yeah.
backing yourself a bit more. I kind of, like everybody else, and again, I know it might sound a little bit trite again, but the imposter syndrome is real for everyone, and I think it might be an Irish characteristic. I don't know, but there's a kind of no notions sensibility that I think some of us have, where it's like, well, I don't want to talk too much about myself. I don't want to, like, lack humility in any way, or show up as arrogant. And sometimes, you miss an opportunity by leaning too much into that humility, or that no notions thing. Again, you don't need to be an arrogant person to tell your story. You don't need to lack humility to highlight the things that you have achieved, or people around you have achieved, because of the impact that you've had on them. And the other thing, I suppose, really critical to that is, opportunity will pass you by if you're not good at telling your story, because other people are good at telling their story. And again, I just mentioned how important stories are for me in visualizing things. And so, if somebody's telling a better story than somebody else, maybe I might be inclined to listen to that. So that was profound for me.
And you've touched off so many really good strands in there, and I want to pick a piece out, if you don't mind. The self-awareness, for sure. The ability to be able to communicate and articulate that awareness in a way that's true to you, in a way that makes sense for your brand, in that storytelling. They're all connected. So we did work on values, and you'll probably remember the
Yeah.
values allowed you to be more agreeable because you're like, yeah, why? Of course, family is my number one. Whatever it might be. But also the value in you and how you represent yourself and how you're being experienced by other people. And in class last night, I was talking about awareness. And we know that research says that when we say we're aware, only 15% of people are actually aware. The other 85% are in a variant of awareness, but they believe it's full. And then we look down into awareness being internal awareness, what I know about me, and external awareness, what I believe other people know about me. And the work on brand that we did, joining the storytelling together. And I remember that piece kind of clicking with you, and it does with everybody, especially in a leadership perspective, is the storytelling in our head. If that has mistruth or misrepresentation or doubt, imposter syndrome will be the loudest voice in the room. But when you connect it with the evidence of the outside, and how people are experiencing you, and get the truth from that and root our brand in truth, the rest eases and the storytelling becomes consistent and reliable. And that's when people make decisions about you. When you're not in the room, there's no misinterpretation, there's no miscommunication. I know Mark is like this, and Mark will speak about himself in that way, and I can speak about him. And it's that joining of awarenesses for everybody that makes your brand really strong. And you did that work. You moved into both of those areas of awareness. So you're in the 15% in my mind for sure. And if we take that into leadership, it's definitely one of the blocks we know in coaching, that fear of stepping out and being wrong. You know, I want to be a leader, but I'm in the shadow of a bigger leader. Look, they're very intimidating. They know everything. They've been around 10 years, 15 years, and I'm kind of new on the block.
Mm.
What can we work with or focus on with those new leaders? And I work a lot with new leaders who are in that shadow a bit of other styles of leaders or outdated leadership styles. How do we enable them get out of the shadows? What do you think would work in this day and age?
I think it the leadership to like command and control leadership hasn't, it isn't a feature really. I mean, there are parts of industry and society where that's important, right? The military or
Mm-hmm.
maybe parts of manufacturing or something where safety and risk are important. There is some degree of kind of command and control, which is necessary. But modern leadership is as far away from that, I think, as you can possibly get. And because
Yes.
people have realized that other people don't like to be told, exactly what to do, or to feel penned in and feel like they have no agency or no access to their own creativity. I think the mistake that new leaders make, particularly, and I'm certainly guilty of this myself, is the pressure that you put upon yourself to know the answer to everything, right? And so if I am leading a team, my job as the leader is to tell my team how to be great, or to tell my team what success looks like, or to show them how to do that. And the real irony of that is, I can teach you or show you how to do something to the best of my ability, but I'm depriving you of the opportunity of discovering how to do it yourself to the best of your ability.
Yes.
And the best of my ability also assumes that I've maxed out on knowing everything. So the best of my ability is the best, and that's the kind of gold standard, right? And like, how
Yes.
arrogant would you need to be to think that you can't be wrong, or you can't learn, or there's no, the ceiling doesn't continue to rise.
Yes.
And so I think that that's a common mistake that new managers and leaders make, which is they put pressure on themselves to know the answer to everything, and then they follow that by attempting to tell people what the right answer is. And sometimes you'll see somebody and they're patently going off in the wrong direction, and sometimes you need to just say, please stop doing that. It's this, it's not that. Or sometimes you let the grenade go off and you let them, learn by themselves from that experience. But I think that that's something that, you know, um, it's surprising still in this day and age, given that coaching and awareness and growth mindset particularly are such a feature, that leaders still do that. Even very, very senior and experienced leaders still do that. There's the Carol Dweck quote, which I
Yes.
love, which is, prepare the child for the path, not the path for the child. And again, I think if you have no experience as a leader, or little experience as a leader, you know the path because you've probably done the job. You might have been promoted into that based on being a fantastic individual contributor. And our instinct as humans is, you're looking out at the path and seeing danger, and you want to save your people. As a parent, you want to save your kids. As a manager, you want to save your team, or whatever. As a human, you just want to save people, rescue people from that danger. And
Yes.
and the better thing to do, or at least, in the coaching context, perhaps the better thing to do is prepare that person for the danger ahead, and allow them to navigate it themselves.
Yes. And we talk about this a lot. And some of the language I put around it, Mark, is the dark side of leadership based on the shadow that they cast. And then when we take that leader out or they move on, the shadow is left of these underdeveloped individuals that wanted to learn, but the leader didn't let them. They just were mini clones of. And of course that impacts team, it impacts business, everything is damaged by that shadow that doesn't get to grow. And in that space, then what we find is that there has to be in the leader set of qualities, skills, let's call them, there has to be the ability to coach and mentor and lead. And then what falls in there as the human is the rescuer, the comforter, the parent, the friend, and it all gets mixed up and muddled up in the past and what happened along the way. So we're trying to avoid our team members feeling that pain, or there's a style of leadership that goes, you have to feel that pain because I felt it to reach this point, so I'm going to make sure you feel it. So if you're looking and choosing leaders today, what do you look for in a leader that has that potential to shift and grow into themselves, but also shape into a team that you want to lead?
That's a big question.
You're welcome. Do you want the whiteboard? Shall I pull it down?
It is. It feels like a whiteboard moment. So let me make sure I'm clear on what you're asking. Like, what do you look for in a leader? You're putting somebody into your team. You want them to take
Yeah.
on responsibility and lead a team. What are the kind of characteristics that I look for? Is that?
Yeah, but we're looking for that space where they're willing to grow, where they're willing to feel uncomfortable, where they're willing to, that uncertainty, because we know imposter syndrome, going back to what we said, is going to show up there, and they're going to look to you or a stronger leader to pick up or help or compensate. What are the key qualities you look for that's in that growth mindset, or as we call it, an ever-growing mindset, to go, here's someone that's willing to shape and grow and evolve and emerge with
Yeah.
the team, with the business, with the strategy to get the results we want to.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things. I think you really want to have somebody who's demonstrated a commitment to learning, to their own learning. Somebody who's
Yeah.
demonstrated that desire, that passion, that curiosity to develop themselves. And development is, it'll come in a bunch of different ways. Like they can say, I studied this, I learned that, I'm certified in this, I'm accredited in that, or whatever. And learning will come from the experiences that they've had, either career-wise or in life. In a case where you don't have context on the person because maybe they're not part of your team or they're coming in fresh and you're evaluating them on that, then some of those things, some of those things can be represented or misrepresented, as a hiring manager, you can probably put too much stock in, ticking the box on they have the accreditation and they have the
Yeah.
experience. Really, what you want to find out is how comfortable are they with failure?
Yeah.
At least that's what I want to find out. Like, how comfortable is this person with failure? How comfortable are they with taking risks? How comfortable are they with feedback, and critical feedback? How much of their own success is tied up in their ego or their own personality? How much of their success, rather, how much of their success is tied up in the success of the teams that they've led, or the projects that they've run, or the connections that they've made, and the kind of the collaborative aspects of their life and their work. So those things are things that I would typically screen for. If I'm evaluating folks that I know, like let's say for promotion or something like that, people that I'm working with,
Yeah.
really, that especially when you have that evidence base, there's no question it's easier to see that, because
Yeah.
you can say, hey, Maureen and I've been working together for 2 years. This is Maureen's track record of performance. There's some kind of table stakes things that you will want to have in place. All the performance metrics look good. But what has Maureen done to enrich the rest of the team beyond her own work? What has Maureen done to promote her team? How many people have left her team and gone on to do great things? Where has Maureen failed, and maybe even disastrously, but learned from that failure, or we as an organization have learned from that. So those are the kind of things that I look for. I think it's easy to say that I have a growth mindset because I'm accredited, or I've done the whatever. The demonstration of growth mindset is succeeding through failure.
Yes, brilliant. I love it. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to learn from that, seeking people who will. But just to call out, that awareness that you're using as the filter for either promotion or hiring is based on the work you've done on you. And so we go back to, if the leaders aren't doing that work, they
Yeah.
are still filtering and selecting in that old style or the outdated style. And would end up with the same results. If you carry on doing what you're doing, you're going to carry on getting what you're getting, which is keeping us coaches in our coaching business very busy, which is great on one hand, but there needs to be a cascade of new style to allow the emerging leader space to grow. So
Yeah.
if we were to take emerging skills that are critical to coming up into the future, we know AI, we know the digital world. What do you see as I want to say essential emerging skills that you are finding in your business or in your space to go, no, we need people who are open to this, or, at least going to learn and be willing to do it differently. What are those skills you're looking at?
I think one of them is even more basic before we get into kind of shifts in technology. One is more basic, which is, the world has changed profoundly, and the world of work has changed profoundly in the last 5 years. And none of those 5 years have looked the same. And
Yeah.
opinions have changed in those 5 years. You've very kind of, I think it's kind of dangerous to make trapdoor decisions. And some businesses have been really deterministic in saying that, we are fully remote, or we're fully in office or something like that, and have kind of missed the opportunity of preserving optionality for something where we really don't know where this is going to end, right? We don't know what the future of work is going to look like, but it's very different to what it looked like in, February or March
Yes.
2020. We were all at the office 5 days a week. And so I think leaders need to be not only open to that and aware of that, but leaders of my vintage, let's say, that came up in a 5 day working week in an office, have to abandon the notion that just because that's the way I learned it and the way I like it, that has to be the way everybody else does it. Because the genie is out of the bottle on that, right? I don't think we're going back to that way of working. And so I think adaptability, open-mindedness, some degree of flexibility around, working styles, I think is really important. I think it's also really important to, and again, not to sound too predictable on this, but the world of work has long since come to appreciate the value and the benefit and the competitive edge that comes from hiring diverse teams and having an inclusive environment. That can't be brochureware, that can't be something that just kind of goes up on the corporate homepage.
Yeah.
The true appreciation of that is when you see, okay, if my team is a better reflection of society, then I'm more likely to be able to know what my customers care about. I'm more likely to be able to know, where my business is going, because I have all of that experience. And it's kind of like you mentioned a little bit earlier about, how do you use the signals, or the trap might be that you use the signals when you're hiring to say, okay, if I'm not the kind of leader that cares about mindset or whatever, I look at the signals, like the qualifications, the years of experience, the number of promotions, all of those. And those are important things, but they're only signals. And I always kind of go back to that Moneyball thing. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the example, but it's the Billy Bean story of assembling a baseball team, actually using data. But the idea was that it was in the assembly of the team was this assembly of players that were really uncharacteristic ball players. They didn't look like ball players. They didn't look like they would succeed. But through data, they found a formula of, looking at the kind of the outputs and the behaviors that were most important to make a player succeed, and hence, by combining that with other players in other positions, how a team could succeed. And so, being open to that idea that the classic signal is not always going to tell you what future success is going to be. It's not a good predictor of future success. When it comes to things like technology, I think it's again super important to adapt to what's happening. The first one, again, a pretty basic one, is really good remote enablement for your teams and for your leaders. We're having this conversation over Zoom. We're used to
Yeah,
doing that
yeah.
at this stage, but some of your team might be fully remote, some of your team might be hybrid, some of your team might be at the office the whole time. And depending on your organization, it could be a combination of those things or just one way to do things. But technology has to facilitate that. And if you really are going for inclusivity and belonging, then tech has to exist and the leaders have to know how to use it. Sometimes you hear people saying, well, I'm much better in person. I'm
Yes.
much better in front of an audience when I can stand up in front of them. That ship has sailed. Get
Yes.
good at Zoom. Get good at using other media to be able to lead really, really effectively. And then, of course, the one that we haven't mentioned, but which is the looming disruptor, and present disruptor is AI. That
Yeah.
is the thing that is changing. It is the biggest paradigm shift probably since the iPhone, or the internet even. And it's profound because it is both the kind of the enabler of new ways of doing business. I think most people, particularly maybe the uninitiated, when they think about AI, is this is a threat to my job. This is my job is going away now because this thing is gonna come and do it. The folks that used to handwrite notices and hang them up on
Mm.
church doors in the 15th century thought the same about the printing press, right? And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden they became printing press operators, right? So like technology has always been disruptive. I think again the key for leaders is to figure out how it helps you and your customers and your team, be really successful. And that could be through adaptation of your product. Your product maybe could be better with AI, or your service or whatever might be. But your team can most certainly be more efficient by understanding how to use AI and learning, how to do it. And the way that I would see this is, there I would like to think that we should look at this as an exciting frontier rather than necessarily a threatening frontier. It will be a threatening frontier if you find yourself 6 months or a year down the line not having skilled yourself on AI or learned what it means, because then your competitors have done that and then you're stuffed, right? Or,
Yeah.
your team are moving somewhere else that has figured this out. So we have to do it. I think there are still novel ways to understand how to do it, and like, the risk or the risk, I suppose, the threat is that leaders will say, I'm going to get my team skilled up on AI. I'm going to, hire a bunch of people to do that and they're going to get great at AI. What are you doing? Like, are you using ChatGPT? Are you using Gemini? Are you using Claude? Like, are you integrating these tools into your own day to day? How are they helping you? It doesn't always, by the way, have to be, how is this going to help me run my business? It could just maybe help you organize your life a little more, or organize your thoughts a little more. And I think that the mistake is that as leaders, we might abdicate the responsibility for learning new technology to the technology people in our teams.
Great point. I'm an adopter. I love it. And one of my clients out of America, she has named AI. She's given it a name on her team, and she names it as a member of the team. And when she mentioned the name, I was like, I'm sorry, I don't think I've met that person. She's, oh no, that's our ChatGPT, that's our AI. But they're making us loads of money, so we include them in the name on the team as a
Right.
resource. And I thought, what a great way to just include it and not exclude it. So just to finish off, because I am very conscious of the time, AI is helping coaching hugely. It is offering opportunities for a lot of people to access coaching formula and frameworks, the more traditional style. It's not biological, no matter whatever way we dish it up and signal it to do. It's not a biological interaction, which you and I have had the privilege of experiencing as a coach and in our coaching relationship and coach client relationship and all that partnering,
Yeah.
sensitivities to pick up on those nuances. If you were to give advice to people, leaders, managers, who are curious about or not understanding the benefits of coaching and what it can give you in your life, what would you say to them? And I kind of want to add another bit because I'm speaking with you and I know you have a great matrix mind. If you are looking to pick a coach, what would you look for?
Oh, that's a great question. Again, I think, you know, on the technology front, for sure, technology can help answer questions. For me, my preference is I still need to talk this through a little bit, right? And so the human connection is important to me. I think with coaching, one of the characteristics of effective coaching for me throughout my career is the stage I'm at in my career and finding the coach that can help me at that stage. It might not always be the same coach. You know, there will be some folks that stick with you for life. And maybe there's a deeper personal connection or something like that, you know, that allows that to be the case. But coaching is like training for sport, you know, again, not to get, you know, get too cliche on us. Everyone knows this, you know, the top athletes, you know, they train really hard, but they work with coaches. They work with strength and conditioning coaches. They work with mindset coaches. And so I think you know, the selection of what makes a great coach can depend on the stage of your journey. You know, what are the things that I need right now? What's going to help me to get to the next stage? And at some point, you know, you might hit that point of diminishing return for both of you where it's time to, you know, move past that relationship and move on to something else. So I think it really depends on the stage, the thing, the challenge that you're facing right now, and then finding a really great match to help you with that. One of the things for me that I look for when I think about coaching is I look for somebody who's just going to get me out of my own head because I do okay, yeah, sure, I suffer from imposter syndrome, but I also sometimes suffer from I know everything syndrome, right? Which is, you know, so how is this person going to shake me up? And I think you know, turning the arrogance into a self-awareness learning opportunity, you know, what new can I get from this person? And again, it might be about like my favorite thing right now is storytelling, right?
Yeah.
Can I find a coach that can help me develop that or that can I can role play that back with and they can play it back to me and tell me, you know, tell me how that felt. You know, storytelling I've just found to be so profound. Again, I'm a visual person, and so that for me is something that's really important right now. But again, I go back to that stage of career. You think about what is the thing that you need to be good at now, and who is the strength and conditioning or mindset coach or whatever that can help you get there.
Great, brilliant. I'm always when we talk, I feel like we can just get in. I really do want to pull down the whiteboard and spend much longer with you and just design something brand new. I don't know what even topic on. Thank you for your time. I'm going to stop the record. Is there anything else you would like to say that I haven't brought up or you think is relevant to share?
Maybe just one thing.
Sure.
The storytelling thing. I've worked with a really brilliant leader who would often use you know stories in coaching. I would come to him and say, you know, I've got a performance issue in the team, or I've got a you know people leadership thing, or an influencing thing, maybe with you know with other stakeholders. And he would start off with an analogy, you know, a sporting analogy or something from nature. And he'd, you know, in this very kind of storytelling kind of way, you know, he'd kind of talk through the story, you know, so never like we haven't talked about the person or the performance issue or the anything. He's just kind of telling this story. And all the while I'm thinking about, yeah, I can see how I can apply that to you know, Maureen the next time I'm talking to her about her terrible performance or whatever it might be, you know, and you're imagining yourself, you know, in the shoes of the protagonist in this story. And, you know, like, yeah, this is great. And finally, at the end of it, kind of thinking, wait, was he talking about me? Like, is this for my benefit? And you know, I would say probably let's be generous and say half of the time it wasn't about me, but But regardless of whether it was about me or not, just the power of that story of connecting connecting me to something that I could see and feel and that resonated with me was just really powerful. And it's something that I've really tried to tap into myself.
Well, and just because I know a little bit about your songwriting and your guitar playing and the music creativity in you, is that not storytelling also?
I guess, yeah, I guess
Yeah, hello.
objectively speaking, I think I've had more success in my business career than my songwriting
No,
career.
but the ability to ride the bike, whether you ride it at home or ride it in work, is the same ability. You write songs, music, you play with other people, you bring musicians together. You are creative in storytelling, not just in the words, but in the evoking of the emotion that goes with the story. Musicians and creative musicians, whether you're on stage or in your, box room, doesn't matter. It's that being able to tap in through story to bring people along a path that they didn't know that they were on, or they go, oh, that's me, and that's how many times do you listen to a song and go, that's exactly what I needed to hear today. They're in my life, they knew that's exactly what's going on. That is your storytelling ability. All you're doing is converting and translating the language to be for your team or the individual you're in front of. You have this skill. You show that off more, please.
Well, I think as you're talking about it right now, the motivator for me to learn how to play music or over time to begin to write stuff and things like that, the motivator for me is the same motivation as having a coaching conversation with somebody
Yes.
or telling a story or whatever. And selfishly and again, perhaps I don't know, this might sound a little bit again arrogant. It's the reaction that you elicit by doing that thing. It's like I
Yes.
want the song to resonate, or I want the story to resonate, or I want the pearl of wisdom that I'm about to drop to
Yeah.
resonate. And so the kind of the visceral reaction for me, or the driver for that creativity or that storytelling or whatever, is because the adrenaline shot or the dopamine shot for me is the reaction. It's this.
Reaction is connection,
Yeah,
right? It's a connection, and that's somebody was talking the other day. The last thing I want to do is cry. I just don't want to cry, and I'm like, the first thing we do when we're born is cry. It shows we're alive. It's
yeah,
okay to show emotion. Emotion is good, and the more you do it, the more you're able to channel it and show up in a way you want. But storytelling is the most touching to us of we are together, we do belong, we have similar paths that we walk. It's such an exciting piece for leadership. And I actually don't think leaders can bring people along without the storytelling skill. I think it's huge.
yeah. And
Mm.
it's very primal as well. I mean, that
Very.
um, you can go back into theories around why stories were told in the first place, or why the sun was a god, or why organized religion was organized. The power of the story is the thing that kind of brings people together and elicits that reaction, and as you say, that connection. And you see that physical connection when people's eyes widen, or when the corners of their mouth start to turn up, or
Yeah.
perhaps when they cry or whatever. That's the driver, isn't it?
And the full circle on this conversation is going back to the beginning where you said, as Irish people, we're not great at blowing our own trumpet or standing up and going, hey, look at me. But we are really good at storytelling. When you do look back at our history and who we are and what we share, that storytelling is something very primal to us and very strong in our DNA. So do more of it, please. Write your book, I'll buy it. Um, Mark, thank you for the time. Can I just